Mr Speaker.
I call the honourable member David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I take this opportunity as well to wish you and the House a happy New Year. Sir, in a few months, the Finance Minister, Sir, Bill English, is likely to present his first budget surplus. His first budget surplus in 6 years. It will be his last budget that he presents to this House, and good for him, it will be in surplus. And it must be galling, sir, that after 9 surpluses under Labor, it has taken him 6 years in order for him to be able to deliver one budget surplus to this House. And he is obviously getting the hang of it. 9 years of surplus, 5 years of deficit, and finally we get a budget surplus, or that's what we are led to believe. Sir, a budget surplus to the Labor Party is a given. This is what we do when we are in government. We produce budget surpluses. That is what we do. And here's another statistic, sir, that since the Labor government ever came into office, right throughout history, and the National Party, the average GDP growth under National in all the governments right back through history has been 2.9%. The average GDP growth. The average GDP growth under a Labor government throughout history has been 3.7%, sir. 3.7%. Every government, every Labor government has been able to produce better growth than a National government. So despite what this government says about Labor governments, it is the most economically prosperous government that has been able to deliver what New Zealanders want. We have been sound financial managers, and we have been able to do that every time we have been in government. So our economy, sir, has gone through the global financial crisis, as with the rest of the world. We've had the rebuild of Christchurch, which has helped with half of the GDP growth that we're seeing at the moment. Our commodity prices are doing very well, and that's obviously contributed to much of the rest. But the bigger question, sir, is that while our economy is starting to move again along with the rest of the world, the question is, are New Zealanders any better off? Are New Zealanders any better off? Are they also doing as well as the New Zealand economy is said to have been doing? And I know that, sir, many of those people out there who might be watching this now will say no, because 50% of them won't have had a pay increase. 50% will not have had a pay increase in the last year. House prices, sir, are unaffordable. And I ran into a couple the other day. We were talking about their particular plight. They lived in a rented house, saving hard for a house. They made improvements to their rented house because, to be quite honest, the couple that were there, they wanted to live in good accommodation. So they painted it, they put in a sandpit for their kids, they even put in a barbecue. As soon as they did that, the landlord moved them on. They are now in more expensive accommodation, renting, still trying hard to save for that house, but finding it more and more difficult to be able to do it because, sir, this government completely ignored the cost of housing and the price of houses in the economy. And so as a result now, young couples who have spoken to me say they go along every week, they go along to yet another auction, and they are always outbid. They just can't seem to be able to get to that price. And a father of a young woman I know said to me that it makes him so angry that his daughter and his son-in-law and their 3 kids can't do what he did when he was young, move in to their own house and be able to afford it. And that's the opportunity that, sir, that those people had back then and young people today simply don't have. The opportunities for young New Zealanders simply are not there, and it's slipped away under this government. Sir, you were telling me today, in fact, Mr Speaker, that in a house in a street that I grew up in your electorate in Papatoetoe, the other day sold for $1 million. $1 million. That is a house where hard-working New Zealanders, middle of the road, middle class, went for $1 million. And to buy that house, you would need, because this government's put in the LVRs, you would need $200,000 deposit. Now, what sort of family, sir, can afford a $200,000 deposit? Absolutely nobody. Not a young couple. Maybe you, Mr Bridges, but certainly not a young couple who are aspiring to own their own home. Who has that sort of money? And while we're on the subject, power prices have continued to climb. House prices, electricity prices have continued to climb, and I won't forget, sir, a woman that has come to see me and said to me that she gets so sick in her stomach every time that she goes out to her letterbox just in case her electricity bill has arrived. Just in case her electricity bill has arrived. And yet she reads in the paper from Mr Bridges and from everybody else and all his friends that we have one of the most competitive electricity markets in the world. It's just that it doesn't bring lower prices. That's all. Everybody's changing company, but it doesn't bring the price down. So last year the inflation rate was 1% and the electricity rise was 5%. So you tell that to Kiwis that somehow their competitive market is making them better off, and they'll laugh in your face because they're turning their dryers off, their heaters off, because they can't afford to pay their bills. And this government will do nothing about it. And that's why people want a Labor government, because we want a fair society. We do want to see opportunities. We want New Zealanders to have opportunities, the same opportunities as I had when I grew up, the same opportunities that I want for my kids as they're growing up as well, where New Zealanders can afford a house, where they can afford to pay their power bills. Sir, that's the sort of country that I want to live in. Not a country where this government is so out of touch and so arrogant that it doesn't actually understand what real New Zealanders actually want. They believe that somehow the house prices can be cured by Mr Nick Smith's pixie dust that he sprinkles around all over the place, or Mr Bridges' plaintive cries that we have somehow got a very competitive energy market. Well, it's absolute nonsense, and people out there know that. And yet they're not listening to ordinary New Zealanders. They are so arrogant and they're so out of touch that they don't actually understand what it is that New Zealanders want. They're not listening. They're not listening to the fact that this government is about to sell off yet another power company. Genesis is soon going to be on the block. Genesis that no mum and dad will invest in. Let's face it, when was the last time you heard about mum and dads investing in power companies? They don't. Only 1%, only 1.5% of New Zealanders actually invest in these power companies. And I can tell you what, they're not ordinary mums and dads, not the people that I speak of. That's how out of touch this government is. That they really think that this government is saying that mums and dads are buying it. No, the corporates are buying them. The financial companies are buying them. The overseas companies are buying them and shipping the proceeds and the profits off to other places outside of here. Sir, this government is out of touch. It is out of touch. It's arrogant. It's lost the plot. And that's the reason, sir, why they will lose this year. And I congratulate Mr English on his last budget being in surplus. I'm so sorry that the other 5 were in deficit, but at least his last one is in surplus. Sir, His days are numbered, and so is this government's.
Yeah, good speech. Good speech.
I call the Honourable Minister